Peace and blessings, soul fam. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. My brothers and sisters, are you feeling the love? Are you feeling the beauty? Because today we have Bela Divine in the house. Welcome, Bela, our guest today. She is a Mexican mystic. She's a trauma specialist working with quantum energies. So looking forward to getting some abundance codes, activation codes, and love codes for her today. Please welcome Bela Divine.
Yes. Thank you so much, Adam. It's so beautiful to be here joining you today. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Had you previously heard of Sacred Sons before we reached out to you?
So I heard of you when you reached out to me. My partner was like, "No way, Sacred Sons! I love them. Their work is so cool. I love what they do around masculinity." And I was like, "Okay, beautiful. Let's dive in." I think that after that, I checked out your podcast, your work, your page, and I think it's very needed in this world. So I was all in. Super excited to be here.
Yeah. We were talking, before we hit record, about how people from underground scenes, whether that's like the punk rock, emo scene, hardcore scene, maybe even hip hop scene, have kind of like gotten into this spiritual work and spiritual entrepreneurship, which is something that you teach. So I would love to dive into all of those things, as well as your sacred union with your partner and all of these things. But before we do, I'm going to invite us to take a breath for ourselves. Let's do one more, because sometimes it's just good to take two.
Yeah, let's do it.
Scanning the body, feeling what is alive and present. And Bela, on this beautiful day, what is most alive within you?
So what's most alive for me today is connecting more and deeply with authenticity through pushing the edges of what I know to be real and what I know to be true to myself.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Adam, checking in. I'm a little tired today. It's one of these days that I woke up and I'm like, it was such a big energy day, an abundant day yesterday. And it's almost like I need to acknowledge when I have those high highs that what's coming up next is like, oh, I got to take a rest. I got to integrate all of this goodness that has been building. And so that's kind of the energy that I woke up with today. And sitting here with you and feeling your energy and your smile, it's like activating me. I'm like, okay, I'm getting into it and we're building it. And but it's also important for us visionaries, for us entrepreneurs, or whatever it is that we give our life force energy to also acknowledge when it is our time to rest. So I'm checking in with that today. And so, you are empowering visionaries with tools to heal trauma and develop people's spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
Say more about that.
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying that I got into this journey of the spiritual work firstly through myself. And you talked briefly about, we were talking about Philadelphia and like that kind of inner city, the hardcore scene, maybe hip hop. And, I was definitely in that angsty scene when I was younger. And I think it was so much of like the only way that many of us knew how to express the pain and the traumas that we were withholding, because tools were not as accessible to us at that time. And so I got into this work through trauma, very much by accident, actually. So my family is of a spiritual lineage in Mexico called the Toltecs, and I have indigenous roots there in part. And so, I always had that side of me, but one of my mom's friends, she's both a shaman of a shamanic lineage and a psychotherapist, and she gave me a family constellation, and it was to kind of help me heal from like my parents' divorce and the fear of love never lasting, which followed me for such a long time. And when she did this constellation for me, everything in my life changed. It was pure magic. And so she kind of took me under her wing as her mentee, and got like through her psychotherapy school, because she owns a school of psychotherapy in Mexico, was able to get me in with some really incredible teachers, including Bessel Van Der Kolk, Richard Schwartz. And these are people who are more on the like traditional psychiatry side of things. And so it's really hard to get training with them without being a formally trained psychotherapist. So I was really lucky in that way. And so I started there. And then over time, I realized that like ultimately what connected all of the work that I wanted to do was working with visionaries, people who knew that there was more and who could sense that there was more in life and who could imagine it, but didn't quite know how to make it happen. And so I love working with both trauma, with energetics, and with spiritual gifts to kind of help visionaries to create that life, because that was the path that kind of led me here.
Beautiful. And do you feel like some of your ancestral roots, have unlocked those gifts within you, within your DNA? Do you feel your ancestors with you in the work that you do?
Yes, 100%. So my grandmother, my abuela, is indigenous, and so she's the one with the Toltec lineage. Her family is from Tula, and I grew up between the States and Mexico. And when I lived in Mexico, I lived in her house. And so from a young age, she was teaching me all sorts of things that at the time I didn't fully understand.
Right.
It was very energetic stuff and breathwork techniques. And like I would be doing them without a conscious understanding. But when I got older, it kind of landed. And it also, what she really did for me was give me this freedom to utilize my imagination to be a visionary, to create the reality I wanted with no limits. So even when there were these societal limitations, I really I believed that if I visualized certain things in my life that they would happen, and then they started to. And so, yes, absolutely. The answer is yes.
Yeah. And so you work with visionaries, you are a visionary. What is your kind of understanding or definition of what a visionary is?
Yeah, so I would describe a visionary as somebody who can, I would describe a visionary as someone who uses their imagination and utilizes the wisdom that's accessible to them to build their life on purpose. A visionary is someone who creates their life on purpose.
Yeah. Cool. And your purpose is to empower these visionaries. Got it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about in ways in which we release trauma. But you mentioned that you were dealing with the trauma of your parents' divorce and some of
Mhm.
these concepts around love that
Mhm.
maybe weren't resonant with your soul, and that created some kind of a fear story around love. So how
Mhm.
did you, in your own experience, kind of transmute that story? And I know you're in a partnership and a union that you're very proud of, and twin flaming and all of the things, right? But
Mhm.
how did you transmute that initial pain in your own way?
Yeah, so first, I think the background of like the ancestral patterns is helpful, because in addition to the ancestral gifts and having access to certain spiritual gifts through my grandmother, which, I can always elaborate on, but I also inherited the familial pain body, which was that every person on both sides of my family is divorced or separated,
Mm,
as far as we know, every single person. So I had no healthy example of love growing up at all. Like
same.
divorce, yeah.
Same, and I feel like there's a lot of us in this generation that have experienced that in ways. How did you transmute the pain of like this understanding that you had of love? Because people in your family were divorcing, but from what you said, it seems like you had a longing for like a lasting type of love.
Yeah, so it was like ever since I was a little girl, I had this knowing that I was gonna find my other half, right? And I think it was also something that drove me crazy because I never saw it in my life. So I was like, okay, I know this person's out there, but also is this even real? Am I making this up in my own mind? And really what allowed me to transmute, you know, that pain and like find this relationship was getting extremely clear on the kind of love that I wanted and like the non-compromisables and what love even was. Because I think up until I really sat down and got really, really clear and stopped trying to like fit somebody into that, you know, dream idea of what love was supposed to be, I was kind of repeating my familial patterns, my parents' patterns and relationships and breakups, you know, mimicking the divorce. And it was super painful. And so by the time that I met my partner, I had been really, really clear on what I was looking for. And I had spent about a year not seeing anybody and just really kind of visualizing this person. And I would even write poems, just kind of like outlining what they would be like and what was important to me. And something that's interesting about my love is that it was very important to me to have a cultural connection with somebody. I was like Spanish, and it's not even Spanish, but it's like Hispanic culture or Latin culture. And my partner is also half Mexican, so he shares those roots with me as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, and there is something in there where we have to redefine for ourselves what love actually is. You know what I mean? Because we've been sold these narratives. We go through, you know, whatever it is, painful dating experiences, or being with or witnessing a love that just does not resonate. So we have to redefine and seek for ourselves. And I love that the cultural piece is important to you, because it is from, like, you know, from the time you're a young girl or whatever, and you sorry, from the time that you're a young woman and your grandmother's influencing you, it's like, yes, that's a part of the love that you embody.
Absolutely. And I think some of the big things that I learned about love that I would, you know, suggest that everybody consider when they're thinking about like what they actually want from love is, you know, learning how to speak the other person's love language, and also learning to like identify what your dream future is and what you're not willing to sacrifice, and finding someone who's going to um, be in alignment with that pursuit, right? Because otherwise, eventually you'll grow apart if you're moving in different directions for the future.
Yeah. And so just to wrap up this piece on love here is, I just watched a video. You guys were breaking down what twin flames were. You know,
Mhm.
is that something that feels true for you all? The twin flame of
Yeah,
partnership.
100%. So it's so funny because I always was like, I don't know if I fully agree with that. I have a natural skeptic in me, as woo as I might be in some ways. I'm also very grounded and logical. And so it's like this balance. And it wasn't until I met my partner, Nick, and we were literally sent on this journey to basically help each other heal our opposite familial karmas. Like when Nick and I first met, I had this tendency to run away from love because that was what I had always seen. And I helped him, I'm sure as you saw in the story, kind of work through healing some of his familial karmas through learning how to communicate with family members who he was estranged from, and kind of making
Mm.
peace with his dad's death. And so it felt like something so much bigger than us. And I feel like that is so much about what like true twin flames are about. And I think it's also the reason I've kind of come to this place where I really want to share about it is because I think the world needs to be inspired by love and see what love
Yes.
looks like, and see what like vulnerability between the masculine and feminine looks like. And, you know, my partner, it's awesome because he is both so like he's so like in his divine masculine, where like seeing me succeed, seeing me make a lot of money, seeing me do whatever I do, like it doesn't threaten him. He's so supportive, and he's like, one of my favorite things that he always says to me is he's like, you're free. And I just love hearing that because it just like I feel like, you know, I don't want to go anywhere, but I know I have this freedom to like fully exist in all my dimensions. And the same goes for him.
Yeah, the role of the sacred masculine in regards to the divine feminine is to hold the space so that the feminine can be free, so that the
Mhm.
feminine can flow within the container of the masculine. And it's important to hold that space.
Mhm.
And I'm sure at some point for Nick, it'll be important for him to, like, for you to be that for him in that way. And I'm sure you are in many ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It goes both ways. And, from the beginning, like he was a man who cried, and I loved that. Like, that was something I looked for specifically. I was like, I want someone who's going to get comfortable getting uncomfortable. And so, any of the male listeners out there, I would really say that like the best thing you can do is just be open to exploring new things. That was something I really valued in him. Is I took him to his first yoga class ever. And it wasn't like I had to force him to keep going. He was like, "Whoa, this is crazy and awesome." And he just kept it up and kept deepening his relationship to all of it, his emotions, his body. Yeah.
Nice. Spiritual entrepreneurship. It's happening in the world. And my whole Instagram feed now is like everyone is a coach. Have you noticed this?
Oh yeah, it's
I'm
totally
like, what happened? You got
exploded.
like everybody's a coach. As I'm like, oh, cool, another coach. Oh yeah, what are you coaching today, coach? There's so much free advice. There's so
Uh-huh.
much, um, just kind of like, and it may be because I'm in my own kind of silo,
Hmm.
of this type of work, but in that I feel like there is something really profound in what that is that we as a culture are now putting our energy or even like our financial energy, our abundance into healing modalities, into things that actually serve the soul level, the heart space, the medicine ceremonies, these type of ways, and it's being highly valued. And you are
Hmm.
someone I see who is like acknowledging that fact. I think it's important for people who provide these spaces to like acknowledge the fact that this is valuable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, it can be easy when you've been programmed into scarcity your whole life to see the coaching industry, to see anything that is out of like a norm, a societal norm, and be like, oh, this is bad. Like, oh, people making $1 million, like that's a lot of money. That's uncomfortable. But I think the whole coaching industry is about getting free in some capacity and pushing past those edges and those upper limits of like what we think a lot is, or what we think good or bad is, or any of the polarities. Like that's something we talk a lot about in Toltec wisdom, is kind of just dissolving polarities. And something else that I love about witnessing spiritual entrepreneurs when they're in integrity, key phrase there,
Yes.
is seeing people be the experts of their lives, seeing people like learn to yeah, get free on the inside and give other people permission to do the same. I think it's really special.
And what are some of the ways that you align people to their spiritual gifts? In my work with men, I have a bit of a, you know, I have a good track record of aligning men with their purpose as well. And I
Mhm.
think this is important work because brothers and sisters, we all need reflections from others to kind of hone us into that direction, or to say yes, yes, keep going, like this is working, or actually maybe don't do so much breath work. And that singing you were doing though was really good. You know what I'm saying? Just like that little nudge can flip somebody's entire script, truly. And so what are some of the ways that you align your clients, your friends to their spiritual gifts?
Yeah, so I think I love working on all the levels of mind, body, spirit. I think that just like any balanced, teacher will teach a little bit of everything in that way. But I think that, the first thing that I would say is that, uncovering my spiritual gifts, it happened to me without too much guidance. And I learned that I could channel, and it was very weird. And I was having these messages coming through, and was like almost like disassociating, was just a little freaked out by what was happening to me. And once I kind of made peace with like what was happening and what I was experiencing, and more so had external validation, where like I don't know, I had a friend commit suicide, and he came to me in meditation, and I got so much information, and it was like, call my dad and tell him this stuff, and it was stuff that made no sense to me. So I called his dad, not a spiritual person, I waited 3 months. Like I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I told him, I called him, I told him all the details. And his dad was blown away. His dad was like, that was him. That was him. And also the memorial service is tomorrow. It just happened that I called the day before, please come. And he pulled me up in front of all these people and was like, this girl channeled Major and told the story. And I was like, what is life? This is crazy, right?
Wow.
So
Wow.
that was my true like big awakening to my spiritual gifts. And actually my grandmother had the same gift, and my uncle, it's like this weird thing connected to death and rebirth and kind of making peace with that boundary in this life that runs in the family. And so when I found that out and I was like, okay, let me normalize this a little bit, that was kind of like my in to helping people identify their spiritual gifts. But I think in general, we just make a lot of agreements that weigh us down and that limit our perceptions. And we forget that like we create our lives through our perceptions. So I think the first thing when it comes to activating spiritual gifts is just like expanding those boundaries of what is real and what we can perceive. And so I love to help people at first, like the first thing is working with all of the senses and helping them isolate senses to figure out where they have strengths, right? So like I am very auditory. When messages come through, I hear voices. And some people are very visual, but other people feel things with their body and they're like, oh, my heart. And that's a sense, right? And so I think that's a really special way to get started. Yeah.
Yeah, I see it in pictures, and it almost plays out for me like movies. Even, you know, without the assistance of plant medicines, but in meditation and in all those ways, I actually see pictures. So I love that you're expanding the natural gifts of the senses. But I wanted to ask about, you're in that place, you're channeling your friend who's just passed. It's confusing. It's like overwhelming, right? How did you then start to hone your gifts, and kind of come to terms with the fact that you're a medium, that you're a mystic?
Yeah. So the way I started channeling him was that right after he passed, I found a book randomly, just like literally on the sidewalk, found a book about channeling.
Spirit.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, let me read this book. And so I was practicing these techniques that were all about accessing the different senses. And from there, that was like the confirmation I needed to go so much deeper. And once I acknowledged that as a gift, I realized that there had been this pattern of me continually being there for people who had lost someone very close. My partner lost his father. And so being a part of that journey and just witnessing him kind of make peace with grief and yeah, that whole thing, you know, the whole event of his father passing definitely helped me to hone in on it. But I think getting some confirmation was really the key. And then from there, it was dedication to practice, because unconditioning yourself out of fear and reconditioning yourself to feel confident and to not feel crazy when you're activating something that isn't talked about in society is you know, it requires dedication.
It does. I love that. It was the confirmation and the dedication that
Yeah.
allowed you to continue moving forward with consistency, because
Yeah.
within that dedication is implied consistency, right? I mean,
Consistency is
I
key.
believe this is the way for those of us who are on purpose. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we wake up ready to go to get to it, right? It's like that there is like some part there that once you know, you can't unknow, and we get lit up by it and we want to share it. We want to share it with our brothers and sisters. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's actually where the masculine comes into play so much. And like, I have such a strong reverence for the masculine in its like essence, because like creating structure so that I can flow. So being like, you have a practice every morning and you're going to practice meditating and channeling so that this gift stays sharp. Like without that consistency and that grounded practice and grounding afterwards, right?
Right.
Then it, you know, it's so easy to get detached or to kind of lose the pure connection with the gifts.
So in this spiritual entrepreneurship, in all of these spiritual laws. There's also the law of manifestation or attraction. And
Mhm.
you recently wrote on your Instagram that not only do you attract what you think, but you also attract what you judge.
Mhm.
I thought this was a profound statement. And could you just expand on it a little bit?
Absolutely. So I think like that for me came from a place of witnessing people spiritually bypass
Mm,
by being like, oh, I'm attracting these things by focusing on these things, but then judging other people or gatekeeping in some capacity through from a place of judgment. And I was thinking about all the times when, I was judgmental of other people, when I was judgmental of people who lied, and then I would attract people who lied into my life, or when I would beat myself up for making mistakes, and then I would just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And, every thought that we put out there affirms our belief system and affirms the energy that we attract. So every judgmental thought functions just like every, positive or law of attraction type thought as well.
yeah, I think it's an important part of the journey to, we're never going to get rid of judgment. Judgment can also serve us.
Mhm.
But in the judgment of others, we have to begin to let go of that to really allow abundance to flow to us. Um, because like you're saying, it's not just what you think you attract. Um, but oftentimes, I'll say it like this: it's not just what you say that you will attract. Oftentimes, it's in those crevices, it's in those shadow moments, those shadow thoughts that will also continue to attract like the judgment. So if you're judging someone for being egotistical, it's really like you're judging yourself for that. And
Oh,
so we always have to kind of come back to this concept of who is in me judging me, who is that inner critic.
yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And judgment really is a reflection of something within you that needs to be worked on. So, of course, until you heal it, it's going to keep manifesting in your reality because you're meant to break through that wall.
Yeah. In your uh in your ancestry with the Toltecs,
Mhm.
these are also kind of like mysterious or mystic peoples. We don't really, I mean, from what I understand, we don't know too much about them. But the Toltecs, what they did leave us behind were these massive megalithic structures, and they have those massive stone faces and the wide nose, and some even say maybe they have African features or Central American features. And um, it's a very interesting culture. Have you had any time or a chance to explore it with maybe your family or being a part of that culture?
Absolutely. So what's interesting about Toltec was the Toltecs is that they were a group that existed so long ago. So basically everything that exists of the Toltecs is was passed down word of mouth or through nahuales or medicine men or shamans or
Mm,
medicine women. And so it's we have these like tidbits of information and practices, and maybe the words change, but I think what's special about it is that the essence, you can feel it, and the essence is all about working with energy and pretty much just changing your system of cognition or the way that you think about the world. And so I was very lucky because my grandmother was very connected to her spirituality, and so her mother was the same way, and her mother's mother and father were the same way. And so that's as
wow.
far back as we know. But she had all of these notes from her mother about the teachings that she had learned directly and that had been passed down in the lineage and preserved, right, through
Wow.
colonization and through all of these centuries, right? And so I have these books now and I was able to study them. And my grandma has dementia now, but up until maybe I was like 15 or 16, I could talk to her about these teachings and she would help me to tap in in a more energetic way. So a lot less words and a lot more like shift your energy, and shift your thoughts and expand your
Mm.
mind. And I think that's where the visionary word really just felt so good for me, because that was what she taught me how to be. And then, of course, I also was lucky enough to work with Don Miguel Ruiz's son in a Toltec circle, and they
Wow.
have a very strong Toltec lineage. So there are certain people in Mexico, certain shamans that have carried on these teachings. And I always like to say that the best ones that I've been able to find are the ones you can't find on the internet for the most part.
Truly.
And that's something that's been special about my connection to Mexico, is most of my teachers actually aren't from the coaching world, and I love being able to bring these tools from outside of the coaching world in.
Yeah. I love that. I used to tell people, like, if someone tells you a shaman, just go the other way. Like most, certainly, I don't know. It's interesting because a lot of folks are coming out of the jungle in these times, but uh, real shamans, we will never meet them, or we will only meet them in their home. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
but going back to that book, do you know what's in those teachings? Can you give me some pieces of energetic Toltec wisdom, um, that you channeled or that you felt from those teachings from that book?
Yeah, absolutely. So, something that was like the biggest aha moment for me from learning about both Toltec and shamanic wisdom, but Toltec wisdom in particular, was this like idea that they had already kind of tapped into what the quantum field was, or what quantum energetics were.
Yes.
And you might like know Carlos Castaneda. He has books like The Wheel of Time, and that very much talks about the same concepts that my grandmother talked to me about, which is that, time isn't this linear thing the way that we perceive it, and neither is space. And when we start shifting our perspective of time and space, that's when we're able to tap into the quantum. And they call that, shifting your system of cognition. And so for me, like, it looked a lot like doing timeline work, and it looked a lot like floating into the future in my life, and feeling into, different moments in my life. And I think that's why, also when it comes to love, I had this urgency to like find my person, because like I had been so vividly in it in the quantum as a
Wow.
kid. And so I like
It was
had,
very real for you. It was very present for you.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, I think that, for the standard human, like we have these definitions of time, and like the past is behind us, the future's in front of us. But shamans in Mexico and the Toltecs didn't think about it that way. And that was something that totally changed my life, honestly. And it also made time one of my highest values, how I spend my time.
Ooh, I like that. I want to stay here on this idea that not only is time not linear, but if that's true, then our healing is also not linear. And so,
Absolutely.
so can you talk a little bit about your experience of how we heal trauma through the quantum, or through non-linear ways?
Yeah. So, I think when it comes to healing trauma, the biggest component is the body. And that is very much true when it comes to like the Toltec practices, where a lot of like breath, movement, recapitulation work, energetic work, but always working with the body first. And it's the same thing with trauma. And like, I think trauma is almost like an onion. Like there are these different layers, and they emerge at different times, and we have to peel them back over time, right?
Yeah.
And it always starts with like what you're feeling in the body, because when you don't address what's happening in the body, even, if you think about like all of the things you feel in a day, I feel everything in a day, if I'm being honest with myself. I
Mm.
hope, right? Because otherwise I'm not like completely numb to the human experience. But it could be like 0.2% like joy when I look at something cute, or oh my gosh, my dogs are barking and I'm on a call and I'm a little bit annoyed. And maybe it's like a little annoyance or frustration at something that happened, and that will start to build up and build up and build up. And if we don't address it, eventually we explode. Eventually, it spills out. And so when it comes to trauma, I think that the most important thing is recognizing that the work is continual, and it's this continual draining out that emotional energy, or getting that emotional energy to keep flowing so that you don't explode, or so that you don't, I like to say that with men that I've worked with, there sometimes is this tendency to be a bottler, where you're like, the things really add up and add up and add up, and then you just explode. And then they're left feeling guilty. You're like, whoa, who is that person? And it's just because I think men have had even less permission to fully, like, throw a tantrum, right? Like, kids have this incredible technology where they're just like, they throw these tantrums, and then they're fine. 5 minutes later, they're like, okay, I can move on with my life now. And
Yeah,
it's really,
like, not only are they fine, like my son, he just threw a tantrum probably an hour before we got on this call. And, I sat with him, I laid him down the bed, let him do his thing. And then it's like, he's not only is he fine, he's up and playing outside, like, boom, you know what I mean? And because he allows himself to move through it, and animals do it. If you see a dog kind of get sideswiped on the road, they'll shake, and they'll
yeah.
shake that out like immediately in the present. And yes, men have been suppressed in our feelings or in our emotions for many reasons. And as sacred sons, that's a big part of the work. How do we meet this energy so it doesn't come out sideways, so it doesn't impact our partners in a negative way, so it doesn't impact our children in a negative way? And we have ways as men. And I'm curious, in your working with men, what have you found that's worked? And have you found the ability to get some of these men out of their heads and back into their bodies?
Yeah, I think for sure. I like, the first thing I do when I work with men is make them throw tantrums. And I think
Really?
that, yeah, for sure. Get them right into it. And through virtual
That's funny.
calls, I'll
Yeah.
like screaming in the pillows so that they're not, disrupting
Yes.
anything,
It's a good one.
and making sure they're safe. But yeah, I have them throw tantrums, and I always tell them, and then I work with the inner child, because they need to get it out of the body because by the time they're feeling the anger or whatever it is that they need to move, they're more open to then, like, crying or just letting the pain or the underlying emotions that are a little bit deeper out. And I think, like, the big key there is not getting attached to the story that you're telling, like you might tell yourself. I think that's oftentimes what gets people stuck when
And
they're
if
doing
we're
work.
not attached to the story, what are we? Where do we go?
We just feel the feelings, and that's exactly what men have been taught not to do, and that's exactly what liberates them.
Yeah.
That's
Powerful
what I
truth.
think. Yeah.
Powerful truth. It's simple. It really can be as simple, but just like that onion, it's kind of interesting. Everybody's talking about peeling back layers and layers of resistance, or using the analogy of an onion. And it's interesting that when you cut into an onion, it makes you cry. We're using that analogy, but that onion, there's nothing like it really, like in terms of a vegetable that can make you cry. It's so interesting that those layers are so symbolic to us, to our human body. We can have this relationship to this analogy of an onion, but it can actually impact us in that way.
Absolutely. That's so funny. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, man, we're peeling back the layers. And what you were speaking to, the inner child work, is a great example of non-linear healing technology that also comes through with my sons. Um, there'll be times or experiences or events that I witness my sons do something, and it heals an aspect of my inner child that didn't have that experience, or longed for that experience, or maybe had that experience in a negative way, or in a way that was hurtful. And so I'll get to see them through something, and that can be healing for my inner child. And that's what we're talking about when we're saying time is not linear, healing is not linear. And I believe it goes even deeper,
I
not
agree.
only to the inner child, but to that true lineal healing of our family line, of our bloodline.
Yes.
In the
Family
same,
constellations, so powerful. Yeah.
yeah, I was just going to say, in the same way that your lineage through your mother, your grandmother, your great grandmother, and they've passed this to you, you get to pass it back.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I love that concept. So cool. It's so cool. Yeah, and I hear my partner's father died, and he has all these magical things happen to him all the time, and he feels like his father is living through him in a way when he course corrects. And I feel that so deeply with my abuela, even though she has dementia. Like I can feel, her being like, okay, cool. She didn't make the same mistakes in that situation. So it can be really beautiful. Yeah. I I think one other thing I would throw in for men is this is something I teach my clients, for everybody. Like I think it's really important. The reason why we teach, the somatic tools or the non-linear tools is because you have to look for knowledge that kind of prepares you for the unknown, right? Because at the end of the day, like when you're faced with whatever, you know, deck or hand or whatever deck of cards that life throws at you, the only thing that matters in those moments when life gets hard is what you know to do with the unknown. Whether it's like, okay, I need to throw a tantrum, or okay, like I need to work with my inner child, or I need to like visit my grandmother, or whatever it may be. I think that's so important.
Absolutely. To not only prepare for the unknown, but to be a student of the unknown, to like
Mhm.
to lean into the unknown, to lean into those emotions and feelings, as like you were saying. um it's interesting that you work with men. What do you see, like what do you people ask me this question all the time, so I'm just going to ask it to you. Like what do you see as being the core wound of men, or like the ones that come to you? um, where do you mostly find men being stuck?
So interestingly enough, until recently, I only worked with women.
Okay.
But I had more and so many men requesting to work with me. And I find it's interesting because I have a male coach partner and he works with men too. But men feel more comfortable sometimes confiding in me or in women, I think. And so I was like, okay, like I'm going to create some offers that are for everybody. And what I noticed is that the people who were messaging me the most after certain sessions were men. And what I noticed coming up the most was wounding surrounding love and partners. That was
Mhm.
like the number one thing in terms of people coming into my field and being like, "Ooh, like I was carrying around this heartbreak or like this grief or like just not knowing how to address certain complications related to love." And also on the other end, I work more closely with women who are dissatisfied in love or who aren't getting what they need from their partners. And so it's really interesting kind of witnessing both sides of the same coin.
Yeah. So have you had any success in leading others to their love, to their version of love, to their twin flames through your work?
That is something that Nick, my partner, and I are working on an offering together for that purpose. But I will say that we've definitely noticed that through our work, a lot of people will be ending relationships. Like I think just stopping, like people will stop being afraid to be alone. And I
Yeah.
think that's half the journey, honestly, is just not staying in something that doesn't feel like the love you want and desire and deserve.
I'm feeling like I may put this conversation out around Valentine's Day just because we're talking about all this.
Yeah.
but but let me say this, like, because I love what you're saying, and I just want to speak to anyone who may be seeking their other half or the one, or however you define it for yourself. The script flip there is to find the one within yourself, and in that to romanticize your life. These are Bella's words. I read them earlier, and I thought that's a beautiful concept, to romanticize your life, and to romance your life. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I don't think I would have the relationship that I have now if I didn't spend a good year learning how to romance myself, learning how to connect with pleasure. And I think so many of us men and women, all people, we disconnect from like the innocence that can be involved in pleasure, or just like our right to pleasure, just like learning to find pleasure in just eating our food slowly, or in moaning and expressing our love in a way that like doesn't feel shameful, right? So reclaiming that right to pleasure. And so I think that romanticizing your life can start with that. It can be, it can be on any level that you desire from a partner. Like for me, valuing my time was huge. And so by the time I met my partner, Nick, I think one time he was like a little bit late to meet me. And I just called him and I was like, hey, um, like time is like my highest value, and like I just want you to know that through our relationship, like you have to value my time. And like I set those boundaries so quickly because I had been holding that within myself, and as a result he also learned to he learned how to love me in the way that I needed to be loved, right?
Yes. There's a little bit of me that's like, damn, Bella's like, whoosh, like get in line, son. And there's some truth to like, yo, if you have boundaries that are important for you, you have to tell your partner, because
Oh
people are
yeah.
not mind readers. We actually have to convey this in a loving way that
Yeah.
that can be received. So it's not about cracking a whip, telling somebody how to serve you. It's not
Yeah.
like that.
No,
But
no,
what
no.
it is about, it's about knowing yourself, being the one for yourself, so that you can then inform your lover how to love you. This is key in all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I like under exaggerated. I think he was supposed to meet me and like was texting me like 2 hours later, like, hey, can we cancel? And I was like,
No.
you gotta let me know ahead of time, guy. Like, you gotta let me know. And that was fine. And it was the only time it happened. And yeah, that's a really important distinction that you made there. But just being clear and like lovingly communicating. I think like one of the biggest things when you're exploring anything with somebody is learning how to love each other more than you love being right. Like, if you can't
Oh,
love each other more than, like there's so many times where I want to be right in a conversation and I have to just be like, no, you're right. Or, just be the bigger person. That's how it goes deeper.
yeah, truly. In my experience, it's like being together is better than being right. You know what I mean? It's like
100%.
being on a team is better than fucking being alone on an island and right, because that doesn't get you anywhere. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
until it does. There's this is all to say that um, if you're not in a good situation, you need to know that too. You know what I mean? It's important to have a discernment and to understand that like there's also a time that we have to call it, and that's also a part of knowing ourselves. Hey, this relationship is no longer serving or needs to transform in some way. These are also realities that we have to face, because that narrative of the Disney princess and the prince is like, it's not it. It's about the work. It's about what you said earlier, is in that confirmation and dedication. Like, we have to be devoted to our love.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think like bringing it back to energy, like if you focus on trying to see the energy behind whatever person you're trying to get to know, that's going to help you cut through so much noise in like that pursuit of a relationship. Because when you're focused on seeing energy instead of focusing on what you desire or what you're afraid of, you're going to more clearly recognize someone's intentions, and that's going to help you discern, right? Not judge, but just discern, like, this is good for me, this isn't.
Yeah. So I know you have a couple of courses out, but you have a new course, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
What is the name of it?
um I have two. There's one called Multidimensional Magic. It's a business container for spiritual entrepreneurs. And then I have a single session, a little more accessible, called Healing the Visionary.
Ooh, Healing the Visionary. Tell me about Healing the Visionary.
Yeah, so I made Healing the Visionary. I made because I wanted something that was going to be really accessible to everybody, anybody who is in need of healing. And I made it around the new year, and I wanted to do something different than like create a vision board or goals or plan for your year. And so I wanted to create something that was like, let's release all of the residual energy and shit and just negative stuff that has built up over the last year. Like, there's been a lot of intense stuff happening this year, and let's let it out. And let's basically
Yes.
have like a not just a rage ritual, but working with whatever emotions have been pent up within you, releasing them. And from that place, kind of visiting your highest self once
Mm.
you've worked with the body. So it's like body and then mind, and checking in with like the true desires of your highest self, not just a list of goals or whatever, but like what's so in alignment with what your soul came here to do.
Mm.
And then kind of creating a course of action for the year based on that. So you know it's an integrity.
Beautiful. I love all of this. And I see the need for this, truly. I really do believe in this work. I understand why there are so many spiritual entrepreneurs. It's because it's a part that we weren't taught. It's a part that we've been severed from, our own spiritual nature and our spiritual or our connection to source, to God, to whatever it is that you pray to. It's important for us. And there's a something I often think of is like, who's healing the healers? And it sounds like you're a little bit on that path.
Oh
You know what I
yeah.
mean? And so I also see a bunch of my Sacred Sons brothers follow Bela Divine. I just looked today. I was like, who do we follow in common? I'm like, oh, all these dudes follow you.
Love that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
But
I'm
now you
glad.
have a chance to speak directly to them. Okay.
Oh.
So speaking to the brothers of Sacred Sons, what piece of wisdom, what transmission, and these are brothers who are doing the work, they're on their path. What do you want to say directly to them?
Mm. I'm gonna think on this one for just a second. I have to
Please
like kind
do.
of center myself.
I'm talking about Reiki Marco. I'm talking about
Cool, cool,
talking
cool.
about Fabian. I'm like, who else follows you? Kevin Walton, I think, follows you.
Um, okay, cool. I think I have an idea for what I want to share. I think I would say that if your desires, if your manifestations, if what you hope to achieve in this life is not for the highest good of the planet, of yourself, of others, if it's not for the highest good, it's not going to be as easy to bring to life. And I think that it's just important to check in with intention in that way, and always check in with, is this for the highest good when it comes to your healing, when it comes to your pursuits in life, your personal pursuits, your business pursuits. Yeah, I think that's a really important message. And then I would also say that I think true power in the masculine rests in the kind of knowledge that you have, right?
Mm.
So seeking knowledge that's going to continue to get you through the hard things in life, and that is in alignment with the highest good of you and everyone else around you.
Earlier, you mentioned like if it's an integrity, and that's what I just heard in there. It's like, like men, Sacred Sons, check in with yourself and make sure that what you're working towards is in integrity with yourself, and integrity with where this is all going, in integrity with the planet, with your sisters, with your brothers, like really checking in with that. So I really appreciate that.
100%. I'll just add one last thought to that, which is just that I think something that changed my course, like the course of my life, and allowed me to manifest and allowed me to create abundance and a successful business, was having a higher mission and having a legacy that I hope to leave on this earth. And for me,
Yes.
that's very much about protecting Indigenous people, because, although I am mixed, that's part of my roots and that runs strong. And I just really want to be able to give back to the communities that are protecting this earth. So I think like when you have that higher purpose or a legacy, it helps you to just kind of get out of your own way sometimes and make good choices.
Absolutely. We are privileged. If you're in this time, if you're you're present to all that's happening, it's a privilege to be here and to be granted these gifts from the ancestors. Mm-hmm. So what are you using it for? And how will you give back? How will you play a part in the sacred reciprocity that is within all things? Bella.
Amen to that.
Bella, thank you so much for your time and for your energy, for your beauty, for your grace. Thank you for the energy that you put out into the communities and for the healing work that you are doing. I appreciate it. Appreciate what you're bringing through, what you're throwing down. Give my love to Nick. With that.
Thank you so much, Adam. No, that was all. I was just going to say thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Mahalo. What do you have any Toltec, the Toltec word for thank you?
Nahuatl, which is Tlasokamati. Yeah.
Tlasokamati. I hope I said that right.
Yeah. Yeah, you got it. You got it. Perfect.
All right. And with that, Bela Divine, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family. Peace.